Welcome back to Sika Strength and welcome back to Sika. And we did not just do 10 minutes of a new show without recording. Today's new show is brought to you by the Sika Strength app on iOS and Android. Today there is one of the most impressive lifts of the year, probably top two, and it's a hang Powerclean from a thrower. And because of that, I just want to let you know about the Powerclean program on the Sika Strength app for iOS and Android. Loads of athletes run this, and while it probably won't make you Powerclean 200 kilos for 4 reps, it will add some kilos to your Powerclean, so check that out. You can also run it as a full clean program. There's 2 separate ones on the app. Now, first up, we've Abdullayev Amir from Uzbekistan. He is a 20-year-old, still a junior this year, so the year he turned 20 is your last year as a junior in weightlifting. And this could be the second coming of LASHA, depending how things go for him. First up, we've got a 200 kilo snatch. Now, they have him listed as a 109 kilo plus, but he looks like the lightest 109 kilo plus lifter I've seen. I'd have to imagine no more than 120 kilos, but I'd be very interested to see his body weight. So we've got a 200 kilo snatch and a 225 kilo clean and jerk.
Looking at both of these numbers, there's a few things that come to mind immediately. So the first thing is the finish of both of the lifts, slightly ropey. There's a slight lack of stability there, which is, to be honest, to be expected. So in super heavy weight classes, we usually see people hitting their peak, really getting into their golden years of development in their late 20s. So in this case, he probably has 9 or 10 years to go until he is reaching his peak physical form as a super. In many sports, or in most sports around the world, the heavyweight weight classes take a lot longer to get into their stride. So classically in sports like rowing, in sports like rugby, many of the bigger players actually get held back slightly because they're not quite as coordinated in their late teens and early 20s. And it takes a bit longer for them to, for want of a better term, grow into the size of person they need to be within the sport. Now, with that being said, we see really nice technique here, unbelievably powerful on both of these lifts. And I think it brings up another interesting point of one of the main predictors of you being a senior world champion is you being a junior world champion. And I think you can definitely see the kind of talent that's coming through here.
On the note of development and how long seniors take to develop, the Soviets looked at this quite rigorously. Obviously, it was very, very important for them to have reasonably precise data when an elite level lifter would peak. You know, if you're trying to plan multiple Olympic cycles and you have a crop of lifters now and you have a crop of lifters starting in 2 years, it's important to know when they might be peaking for the best sporting performance. And they often saw, obviously, that super heavies would peak later. This is probably for a variety of reasons: muscle mass development, weight gain. The weights are simply heavier, so it just takes a little bit longer for those training blocks to progress. And they usually saw about 15 to 17 years for super heavyweights. Obviously, this is an average, so it could even take a little bit longer depending on the lifter. Looking at this lift, though, at the 200 kilos, really reminiscent of Pat Mendez, the 207 kilo snatch he hit where he runs off the platform and has the tongue out. It's eerily similar. YouTube was only prompting me with the algorithm for some big squats the other day. But that should hopefully be, an interesting note in regards to your own development. If you're an athlete and you've started in your 20s or 30s, the good chance is that your peak is still well ahead of you, probably into the 10 years, if not longer, from what we would see from most amateur lifters. Now, if you start in your 40s, you're probably not going to see your peak into your 50s, although you'd be surprised with a bit of TRT. But for the rest of you, no matter how terrible you are at weightlifting, you still have a lot of way to go to get better, so keep hustling. Next up, we've got Christina from Belgium, and she's doing a 110 kilo hang clean. The hang clean is a really interesting exercise because we have different kinds of variation in weightlifting, and some of them are really useful self-correcting exercises. For example, if we take the no foot snatch, if we do a no foot snatch wrong, deviate away from the technique that we want to do on a no foot snatch. If we swing the barbell, if we're too slow under, if we're too slow in the extension, if we're not aggressive enough, we're just going to miss the lift. And the self-correcting way of making that lift is by improving your technique. So the only way you can lift more weight, say on a no-foot snatch, is by having better technique. Hang cleans, however, on the other hand, are the exact opposite. You could actually end up lifting more weight than you ever would from the floor with objectively much worse technique and objectively much different technique than you would normally use from hang cleans. Whether you smash the barbell, whether you rode with your arms. So you need to be super conscious when you're doing variants like the hang clean that you're doing them uber correct.
Looking at this particular hang clean then, when she's doing them, there's 3 main things you need to look at in terms of she's doing a great job, and commonly when athletes go for these super maximal hang clean or particularly high hang clean attempts, they don't do a great job of. So the first thing is, on this rep, there's really good timing of hips moving backwards, knees moving forward as she's bringing the bar down into the hang position. Now, in those kind of Frankenstein events like Owen is talking about, where we get a massively overinflated high hang clean with poorer technique, or objectively poorer technique than you'd want for your actual clean, usually we see people just bending their knees. They'll kind of tuck the barbell into their hip pocket, bend at the knees, and then it's this weird kind of bastardized movement where they just pull under the bar. So in this case, really good timing. Hips are moving backwards and knees are pushing forwards. Now, what this also does for the athlete is it brings the shoulders in front of the bar during that downward portion and keeps the shoulders in front of the bar until the extension is finished. This is particularly important on the clean, because the second our shoulders come back behind the bar, we'll get that deviation of the bar out in front, and it can actually lead to somebody staying in that extended position for too long and over pulling the bar. The second thing then is that there's really good work with the upper body, the lats and the mid back to keep the barbell close all the way down and all the way back up through the extension. It's very, very common when we see someone going through a hang clean, a mid hang clean, a low hang clean, the barbell will actually swing out and away from them once they do that turnaround going from the descent back into the extension. So they'll come down, bar will be close to the legs, it'll be nice and close to the center of mass. Then as they turn around and start to accelerate the bar back up, the bar will actually deviate forward. In this case, the bar is kept very close the entire way. There's never more than 2 or 3 centimeters between the fronts of the quads and the barbell. The final thing then is how well timed the catch is. So a lot of the time with the hang reps, whether it be on the snatch or the clean, we will see people driving or diving underneath the barbell as aggressively as they possibly can, getting under these weights that maybe they've never full cleaned before, and then rooting themselves into the bottom position without actively driving up the instant they catch the bar. In this case, you'll see really good timing. The second that barbell is on her shoulders, she's working to stand up, and it leads to very, very good timing on the clean.
Andrew Burns from Scotland, clean and jerking 180 kilos from low blocks. Andrew is a younger lifter. I'm not quite sure what age he is, but he might still be a junior. But this 180 kilo low block clean really caught our eye here. The power, the aggressive nature. He's lifting in a shed. All of that really adds to just the kind of fortitude of this lift and the kind of enamorment we had with it. Low block cleans are a useful exercise. They're actually quite hard to mess up, so if you're not progressing with your technique like you're clean from the floor, then they're going to give you similar issues. So they're one of those exercises which are on the opposite end of the spectrum from, say, hang cleans. That low hang cleans are generally harder for some lifters, so you're almost forced to emphasize better quality technique. Andrew, super powerful. Got some big squats on his page, he's repping 220 quite fast, and he's quite a bright young star for Scottish weightlifting, so that's great to see, and great power, very power.
Very power. The real thing I love here is how active and how powerful he is once he catches the bar in the clean. There's no sinking underneath the bar, there's no loss of position. You'll see very, very active quads and hips here once he catches the bar, and then obviously the power in that dip and drive for the jerk. Really, really nice jerk. Great timing, perfect lockout overhead. It's a gorgeous looking rep overall.
Now, in the Lee Sang section of the news show, formerly known as the Artyom Anchipov section of the news show, I do need to address a mild controversy. A load of you, and I mean Instagram Sika Strength DMs were blowing up last night. I'm not joking, about 100 you sent this in this reel, was Artyom Anchipov squatting 300 for 5 reps. Now, I didn't see the video. I wasn't on Instagram much yesterday. I asked if someone had screen recorded it. Nobody had gotten it. I messaged Artyom today just for the news show to ask him if the video was gone. Why did he take it down? I probably have a good idea, but I don't want to make assumptions. So unfortunately, we don't have the video of Artyom squatting 300 for 5 reps. But we do have Lee Sang-yong deadlifting 240 kilos for a double. Lee, I assume, is heading for Worlds this year. I need to double check the preliminary list for the World Championships in Bahrain at the start of December. Lee should be a little bit more full into the 73 kilo class. If he was stepping on stage this weekend at the Olympia, I'd be calling him full. Would you call him full?
I'd call him full, yeah.
They'd say this package that he's bringing.
Now, looking at these clean deadlifts, or whatever you want to refer to them as, thing I really like here, really good knee positions during the first pull. So gets his knees back and out of the way very, very quickly. A lot of the time when we go for those heavier clean pulls, obviously this is 20 kilos, 30 kilos, and 40 kilos heavier than what we'd see him clean and jerking. When we go for the heavier attempts, people tend to keep the knees forward a bit longer than they probably should. If you're looking at these, look at Lee, look at how quickly he brings his knee back, and then that nice vertical shin angle he has at the end of the first pull really makes for a great transfer over to his actual clean work.
Now, here's the return of the Kazakhstan men.
Woo!
The Kazakhstan weightlifting team is coming back this year. So we touched on a couple of months ago that the Kazakhstan team, while originally banned nationwide from international competition, which is why we didn't see any at the Olympics, there was some legal mumbo jumbo involved, and they have rescinded their ban. They've cut it off a little bit early, and now they're making a return this year in Bahrain due to some tainted chicken and horse meat, I believe the story was. Whatever the reason was, I'm thrilled. Dara's thrilled. The nation of Sikistan is thrilled. And we have a couple of big lifts. Unfortunately, we don't have that 300 for 5, but hopefully we can get it back. First up, we've got Sairam.
Nailed it.
They nailed it. So he has himself down as a 67 kilo lifter. Very, very powerful lifter. We've seen him before the ban putting up some big lifts as a younger lifter. So he's probably one of the younger lifters on the team. But here's a 180 kilo clean and jerk for him. He's an exceptionally good clean and jerker, especially in comparison to his snatch. Gets that barbell really high up into the hip pocket. You know, his grip there, his pinkies are almost on the rings. That's a wide grip. If he's a 67 kilo lifter, he's probably on the shorter end. He's obviously got quite short arms as it is. Obviously, being an elite weightlifter, the likelihood is that the selection process is going to come with someone whose hands are hanging at their hips. So it's an interesting style of lift. He has extreme mobility and obviously tolerance to that, so there's some benefits to it. And obviously then on the jerk, we're getting the shorter distance overhead, and he's making it work incredibly well. What's really impressive about this is that even with that wider grip, he's still able to maintain an incredibly strong rack position in the catch. Looks he's still holding the hook grip, which if any of you have tried this, you'll know your elbows will not appreciate it.
So this is over 2.5 times body weight for a clean and jerk. And the speed he stands up at that clean looks like he could probably front squat 210.
I bet he can. They love front squats on Team Kazakhstan, even modern Team Kazakhstan.
And if you're wondering if your squat needs to be bigger, if you'd like to be standing up out of your cleans like that, and if you'd like that kind of speed and power in the overhead or in the jerk, then having a massive front squat like that's going to help a lot.
It's going to make a big difference. I guess Adila Tully, also one of the Team Kazakh gentlemen, returning to training. You may remember him from such lifts as a 190 kilo snatch from the floor, 220 kilo clean and jerk, kind of hovering between a 96 and a 102. What he'll return to competition as is interesting. I've heard rumor from a credible source that they're potentially looking at changing the weight classes again, which we were kind of hoping they wouldn't do, but it might make sense for the current crop of lifters. It's still, if they do change them, it's going to mess things up. So I'll probably be announced later this year. They usually have an IWS Congress at the Worlds, so there may be some changes. Best for the lifters if they don't, but whatever class Nergasa is coming back at, he's a huge lifter. This is 150 kilos for a set of 3 on the snatch, and he's got the French Luz on. That was one of their Paris City ones. You like that colorway? I feel like you don't.
No.
That's okay.
What I absolutely adore, though, is the sense of urgency with which he flies through that triple. There's no hanging around. There's no messing. Obviously, we're team stand-up over here on our triples. We like people to be standing up. But if you are dropping them without standing them up, this is the way you do it. You absolutely rip through those reps. And then incredibly strong catch on the third one, obviously. Really, really nice looking lift.
Nergasa will be one of those lifters who's got a point to prove this year at the Worlds, not only because they didn't go to the Olympics, but some lifters will have gone and won't have done as well as they've wanted to. So all eyes will be on those. And that's Markinov, another lifter from the Team Kazakh gents, returning with a 310 kilos for a double. We've seen some big clean and jerks from Andas, and this squat is obviously a good indicator of return to form. Pretty casual back squat. From what we've seen of the Kazakhstan national team, if we look at their programming, if we look at what some of the lifters said, for example, I've talked to Archie Manchbov about what he's done for his squat before. He was only back squatting once a week. They like the front squat multiple times a week. The structure of their program is quite Bulgarian-esque, except they seem to favour a little bit more block work, so block snatches. And then they don't seem to do many pulls, or any pulls seem to be included in the program or in the national team program or the template available for that. So they seem to restrict back squatting to about once a week, but then we see them front squatting nearly every other day. So it's a very impressive numbers to be moving with that lower frequency.
I bloody love the upper back position here. That hand width or how wide you want to put your hands has a massive influence on both the position your upper back maintains, but also how much rigidity you can put into your upper back. So obviously, the wider you put your hands out, the shape of your upper back is going to change. If you pull your hands in very close, you get very stacked scaps and subscaps. You'll also get your traps up much, much higher. What I really like here is what I call a quite neutral grip. The real standout thing for me is most of the time, bigger guys, stronger lifters, like in this case 310 for a double, most of the time you bring the hands in that close, you're going to get some breaking of the wrist because the shoulders are quite tight, so the wrist tends to be the area that breaks down or kind of gives way. In this case, really nice stacked wrist position, knuckles pointed up to the ceiling, very, very nice.
Now here we've got Lucas Kodlas, who we've seen very frequently on the news show before with some huge lifts, but here we've got him on a 300 kilo clean grip front squat. He's actively cleaning at the moment. There's a video of him cleaning, jerking, or just cleaning 200 for 3 reps from low blocks or crash pads. And we've seen some big front squats from before, I think in regards to that kind of cross grip position. But this is definitely one of the heaviest front squats we've seen from anybody currently lifting any kind of weight with a clean grip. Obviously, the clean grip makes it exceptionally harder. As hard as it is to front squat, 340 kilos of a safety bar like we saw with Graham Hicks from last week, the clean grip element, fingertips or a full grip on a front squat is outrageously impressive. So this is definitely one of the heaviest front squats we've seen in a very long time. We've seen LASHA front squatting 280. We saw Ilya front squatting 290. I can't really think of anyone else who's posted such a massive front squat and who's actively doing some Olympic lifts, which is the kind of important part of that caveat.
I feel like Lucas is a placeholder in a kind of area of mystery online lifters that nobody really knows anything about. Like that strongman dude in Australia lifting crazy weights in his garden. Lucas just posts lifts of absolute insanity every so often, yet we don't really know anything about him. I feel like this existed a lot more. There was a lot more people in that group back in 2010, 2012 kind of time when the world seemed like it was a small bit larger or harder to access. But Lucas is definitely out there as a mystery beast.
Here we've got a South Korean lifter, Hai Zhongjiang, I believe, is the translation, but the pronunciation is likely very incorrect. We've seen a couple of big lifts from him before, and he's routinely one of the many world-class lifters that the South Korean nation has lifting in a variety of very cool Olympic lifting gyms around the country. We've lots of these lifters. My Instagram is full of them, and I love it. We are just lifting just below what the national team need them to be doing, and there's a variety of them. He is generally a 102 lifter, and he's doing a couple of sets here with a 215 kilo clean and jerk and a short, quick little 160 snatch after.
Quick little tidy 160 snatch. I love the hop back here. It reminds me of Clarence in his younger days. That kind of jump back away from the barbell. One classically Korean area of his technique is that aggressive start and pull position off the floor. Most of us, if you try and be that aggressive off the floor, you lose some position, but you'll see just how well he kind of pulls into that strong start position, knee shift back almost instantly. It looks like they have very low hips as they start pulling, but in fact, by the time the bar starts moving off the floor, his hips are set perfectly in position.
On top of that lower hip position, a lot of them just have really well built lower limbs in regards to limb lengths and torso lengths for those start positions. So they have this position where their knee isn't too far in front of the barbell when they start pulling, and then by the time it gets to the knee, they're quite predisposed to just having those knees further back in a desirable position, usually about in the clean, close to a vertical shin angle. In the snatch, not always quite the position. So they have this homogeneous technique as well across the nation of South Korea, where they put a lot of work into their coaching staff and their system, and it pays dividends in their national team. And you just got lifters like this doing a 215 kilo clean and jerks. Kianush Rostami continues his, I was going to say crusade for Kosovo, but I don't think that's
quite correct.
Continues his march on the Worlds later this year in Bahrain with a 160 kilo snatch. Kianush is obviously literally one of the best lifters of our generation in the last 20 odd years. 2016 Olympic champion, broke the long-standing world record in the 85 kilo class with a 220 kilo clean and jerk. Quite honestly, an amazing lifter. Has had a very tumultuous time in the last couple of years in regards to weightlifting, possibly some of his own fault. Lots of it seems to do in regards to the federation and falling out. Whatever is going on there, we'll never really know or get to the bottom of it. But what we do know is that he's allegedly returning this year for Kosovo, no longer for Iran. And we've got this 160 kilo snatch. Looks pretty good.
Weightlifting is a wonderful sport because you have things like this happening. He's arguably top 20 athlete of the last 20 years, yet he's lifting on sheets of plywood in his back garden. His back garden appears to be some sort of Love Island villa with with very tasteful lighting and lovely setup around him.
This is a courtyard. This isn't a back garden. This is a courtyard.
The courtyard.
Yeah.
So he's lifting in the courtyard, yet he's top 20 lifters of the last 20 years. Imagine for one moment if you had a Premiership soccer player who is top 20 Premiership soccer players in the last 20 years and they're lifting in their Love Island courtyard.
This is why we love weightlifting.
Yeah.
As snatch technique goes well, Kianush has some very, very attractive technique in the snatch, very pretty technique in the
Aesthetic.
snatch. To stick with the cliche or the analogy of Love Island, I could definitely see Kianush going on Love Island and breaking a lot of hearts.
Yeah, with that snatch.
So what's he going to need, what's he going to be competing as will be seen. He's down as a 96, so hopefully, you know, he's going to push closer to those 175 weights. Now moving on to the strength section of the new show, we've got Hagen Henderson squatting 347 kilos to be precise, or 765 degrees pounds Fahrenheit, for a set of 5 on the high bar back squat. We've seen some massive squats from Hagen. This is definitely one of the heaviest high bar squats we've seen from anyone in quite a while. Mart Same and the Greek lifter we posted the other week are probably some of the biggest high bar squatters we've seen in a long time. Many people would, of course, add LASHA Telekatsi to that high bar section. We just don't get to see LASHA push his squat for obvious reasons. He doesn't need to. But this 350 for a set of 5 on the high bar is what I would call ridiculous.
I'd also call it somewhat pedestrian. This looks like an easy set for him. Even when he goes for the last rep, he doesn't have to take a massive breath. Doesn't really, like, obviously it looks heavy. It's an absolute absurd weight. This looks like a normal training day. What is the upper limit here? I'd also love to know what Hagen's background is. Was he throwing? Was he weightlifting? Was he a football player who just loved doing squats and just kept squatting? I'm sure somebody watching this video knows. We'd love to see more information.
So we saw him top out at that 375 kilo squat. So if this is post that, which I assume it is, I assume it's chronologically posted, probably more than 375 there at the moment. Not that 375 he originally posted was an issue anyway. Here we've got Chloe Brennan with a 220 kilo deadlift. This is excellent. Now, some of you might be wondering why we didn't post any of the joints live stuff, you know, Mitchell's 505 attempts and any others, because they'll actually get taken down off YouTube. So the whole new show would be taken down, demonetized, possibly other issues there. So we actually can't post any of that stuff. We've got Chloe's 220 kilo deadlift here.
It's such a good deadlift. Positionally, it's really, really good. Keeps the knees forward for a long time. Maintains back angles very, very well. Obviously, aside from the fact that it's 220 kilos.
Now, sticking with the Strongman team of strength training athletes, we've got John Haack, who's doing the official Strongman Games competition pretty soon, and he is practicing an event, a 700 pounds AMRAP with a massive axle bar. Really interesting about this is the difference in his technique with his regular deadlift, his conventional deadlift for powerlifting competitions, versus the deadlift technique he's using here. The deadlift technique he's using here is more reminiscent of a clean deadlift, where we'd see the shoulders angles moving forward, the knees moving back. We're seeing a bit more of a good morning pattern, which makes sense on a clean deadlift or a clean pull. And in this case, it's probably not possible for him to keep those knees so far forward and maintain a good position with the axle bar because of the width of that and the use of the figure 8 straps. So he likely needs to clear those knees a little bit more.
One thing that I have no bother admitting I was wrong in is that I remember around 2 years ago thinking about the lighter weight class strongman events, and I really didn't think they would be gaining popularity with the speed that they are. Lighter weight class or not super heavyweight strongman seems to be really gaining a lot of traction out there now. To be honest, I just fully expected strongman to keep growing in the same way since the early days of World's Strongest Man, where we just have absolute giants approaching 200 kilos, 7 foot tall, really, really outside of the norm looking human being chasing these strongman events. What we're seeing now is a growth in amateur strongman that is absolutely astronomical. There is our local amateur lightweight class strongman events happening all over the place in every country, in multiple provinces around Ireland every few months, and it's great to see. I really think it's a good sport for people to be competing in. Obviously, one of the negative sides of strongman is that it can lead you to be somewhat open to injury, but obviously if you're intelligent with your training, intelligent with your loading and what you attempt in competition, it is just as safe as any of the other power or strength sports.
Here we've got Sir Dave, who is deadlifting 405 kilos for a set of 3 on the conventional deadlift. Sir Dave is obviously an excellent deadlifter and fantastic technique on these conventional deadlifts.
What I really like here is Dave does a very aggressive lockout at the top of the deadlift. Now, in many cases, when people try and bring in a really aggressive lockout, like you'll see Dave doing, they tend to go a bit too far. So you'll see Dave really has an aggressive pop forward with his hips, his shoulders set back into a nice neutral position. In many cases, when people try and bring that into their own deadlifting, we'll see the hips coming forward and in advance of the shoulders. We'll actually see the shoulders rolling back slightly, the chest opening up, and then our mid back going into a slight amount of extension. Dave does a perfect level of aggression on this lockout, and I think it will lead to much better final deadlift performance when you get to those 1RM numbers.
Now here is possibly the most impressive lift I've seen from any athlete this year, maybe top 2. So there was that obviously 227 kilo front squat we saw posted from the American football player, but this is Adam Strauff power cleaning, hang power cleaning from above the knee, 200 kilos for a set of 4. He went for a set of 5, but it wasn't to be. This is ridiculous. His weight is listed on his own Instagram at 253 pounds. He's 260 pounds here, so that's about 117 kilos, maybe a little bit closer to 120 kilos. So to put this in perspective, this is just unfathomably impressive. I actually can't put this into perspective now that I think about it. There's nothing I can give you in regards to what a hang power clean like this is. So if you lift weights, you probably instantly understand that. If you're watching this, you can already appreciate this. 200 kilos. What's even more impressive, and I think the thing that kind of really pushed it over the edge, is just the fact that his technique on this is very similar to what a weightlifter would do. He's racking the barbell. He's not catching it too wide. He's keeping it super close. He's using his traps. He's pulling himself under the barbell, even in a power clean, which is necessary. It's almost incomprehensible.
Now, when we get into the higher rep sets on hang cleans or any of the power exercises, what we tend to see is firstly a degradation in speed, which is obviously coming from the lack of energy available, that you don't have the same speed, so you mightn't be able to reach the same barbell overall height. And then what you'll get is a degradation in position due to that degradation in speed. So you're not able to pull the bar as high, so you have to catch the bar lower. Maybe because you're catching the bar lower, your hips or knees or back aren't in as good a position. What I want you to look at here is 3 specific areas. The first thing is consistency of barbell height across all 4 reps. He's pulling that almost as high on the 4th rep as he is on the first one. The second thing is foot positioning. Those feet are going just about as wide on every rep. First, second, third, and fourth. There is no massive starfish kind of catch attempt on any of the reps. And then the last thing is just how sharp the rack position is. So you'll see, as he brings that bar into the rack position each time, elbows are coming out and in front of the bar. There's no kind of secondary re-rack. There's no having to bump the bar up a bit higher on your shoulders, pull it up onto the clavicles. It is very, very sharp and very consistent all the time, which leads me to believe that there is a far greater hang clean in there than 210 or 215 kilos.
Similarly, from Adam on his own Instagram, we have this set of 230 kilos for 11 on the low bar squat. So these are moving exceptionally well. This is the style of squat that we always really want to see from athletes, is a largely quad dominant style. So those knees are primarily doing that work. So we can have that low bar position and high bar position. Depth, generally, as a rule of thumb, the deeper we can get, but with heavier weights, the more useful it's going to be across a variety of different sports. Then obviously load management and positions come into it a little bit towards the end. But as the off season goes, good positions, greater weight, large range of motion is the things we're looking for. Now that's easier said than done. Obviously it's very, very difficult squatting 505 pounds for a set of 11 is gargantuan. So these squats are part of that reason he can express so much power on the hang power clean than he's doing there at that kind of 115, 120 kilo body weight.
What we also see here, the higher rep sets. We spoke just 2 minutes ago about how consistent he was from first rep to fourth rep on the 200 kilo power cleans. Most of the time, people rarely think about work capacity or the importance of work capacity up near top end weights. So 3 RMs, in that case 4 RMs. Doing these kind of sets of 10, 11, 12 reps give you a massive amount of work capacity when you get into those 3 RMs in 2 months down the line, 3 months down the line, 4 months down the line, however long your training cycle is. You cannot discount the absolute importance of work capacity for those top end strength numbers.
Now, sticking with throwers who are always at it, we've got Daniel Reynolds, who is power cleaning 420 pounds, which is 190 kilos for the hang power clean. He's also a thrower. Now, this said the Wyoming school record. So that kind of makes me wonder, is he still in high school for Americans? Is that, if that's the case,
No way.
Not only is 190 kilo power clean obviously absolutely gargantuan, but maybe, I know they use it interchangeably with colleges and university in the US, so it'd be very interesting to know what age Daniel is. But this 190 kilo power clean is another example of why throwers are some of the most underrated power athletes. You know, because when you look at their sport and you see them throwing, whether the discus or the hammer or the shot put, obviously they throw them very far and it's impressive. But then when you go see them in the gym moving weights, then you're like, oh, that's what's happening. That's why the lads keep showing throwers on the new show.
What I really love about this rep as well is 2 times you see the barbell bending like it's an absolute piece of spaghetti. So the first thing is brings the bar down, obviously then turns the bar over and starts to accelerate the bar upwards. You'll see just how much bend he puts in the bar. But then when he catches it, you'll see how rigid he is in the catch position because the bar is literally oscillating around his shoulders. So a lot of the time, once we are up near those top end weights, the bar can boss you around a small bit. You'll see some people getting crushed or crashed down on by the barbell. In this case, Daniel is incredibly strong when he catches that bar. It's like the bar is landing up on top of a pillar.
Here we've got 15-year-old Milo Lena. He is a rugby player in Australia. He actually commented on one of our posts when we were talking about back squatting for a pro rugby player. And he said, I squatted 200 kilos for a set of 3 at 15. And this is a massive lift. So very, very nice positions. Squatting in low bar, which is quite interesting. Look at this. It makes me think someone has given him some kind of coaching. It's not usual that you would tend towards low bar position like this. Really nice positions, good solid depth for rugby. This is a good place to be working from. Rugby players will find it quite hard to get deeper. If possible, it's great. We've had some very good rugby players squat very, very deep, but generally when that happens, they're usually athletes will get in their late teens or very early 20s, and they might have been working the high bar for a while. A lot of cases, if you watched a video recently with the front row, yes, front row rugby player, he has a lot of injuries. He had hip injuries, ankle injuries, so we were working hard on the box squat, which can be useful. But if we start younger, I'd implore a lot of the younger rugby players who some of you are watching, try get for those deeper squats, try work on those positions, try a high bar position, try a low bar style squat, try and get a little bit deeper. There's a lot of benefits to you, and you can afford the time in your career. You know, you're not looking for pro rugby contracts right now. So if there's an opportunity for you to work on this, I promise you it'll pay dividends later in your career, especially if you're looking for pro and you possibly could go pro in terms of not being quite as banged up. I feel like you'll get a little bit more out of that. And we're on a bit of a crusade to help some rugby players do just that.
Imagine you're 15 years old, right? You have a school's rugby match on a Wednesday. You're eating a ham sandwich that your mother made for you. And you have to run against this.
Yeah.
You have to run against a fella who's squatting 200 kilos for a triple, and you're essentially a child.
Yeah.
How incredibly scary is that?
Here's a very unusual one for you. This is a cheerleader. They said D1 cheerleading. Now, cheerleading obviously a very explosive sport. It's not typically one that you would think of people doing some absolutely excellent high-level S&C, but we've got this gentleman who posted his 3 days a week. This is Aman Montenegro, and he's doing basically what any good S&C program would look like, and it's just so funny. I don't think people would have given us the time. I wouldn't certainly not have imagined, I'll be honest with you, that there was a cheerleader out there doing S&C to this exceptional quality.
Yeah, this is exactly what you'd want to see an athlete doing. Essentially, these lads are human throwers.
Yeah.
They're not throwing shot, they're not throwing javelin, they're throwing humans around the place. The standout piece across all the lifts here should be some really nice cleans, be some really nice overhead work, but the standout piece here is the hamstring Nordics. I think it was on Monday session and Friday session. Those hamstring Nordics are absolutely impeccable. And if you're somebody, maybe you played a bit of soccer or something and you're used to doing some hamstring Nordics, try that position he's doing where he's flexed at the hip and he's just running the front of his nose out along the ground and then pulling himself back in. Obviously, it's slightly different from the style of hamstring Nordic we'd usually coach, where you start with those hips in extension or in a neutral position and then you bring the entire body out. Just slightly different, but certainly when you get out towards the end of that, you're in just as difficult a position as you were in the fully extended hip version. So try it, see how it feels. You'll see just how impressive this dude's lifting and this dude's training is.
I actually can't fault it. There's nothing looking at this week of training where I'd be like, oh, that's a terrible idea. This is exceptional. Takes a lot of work to get this level of S&C training. Lastly, we've got just a quick clip of Travis A. Williams. He is a US sprinter, seems to do the 60 and 100 meters. He is a 10.13 100 meter, so he's pretty fast. And really interesting in this clip, it's one of the rare occasions that we see sprinters, especially 100 meters or 60 meter sprinters, doing full depth squats in weightlifting shoes. Kind of on a crusade, I suppose, with this particular news show, talking about the uses of that. There seems to be a bit of fear sometimes in regards to full depth squats or heavier weights might make you slower in certain places. And this probably comes from the short term negative impact. So if you do 5 sets of 5 with a heavy weight on your high bar squat in the off season and you go to do some sprinting the day after, you're going to feel slower. You're just fatigued. But in the long run, it's going to benefit you. And it's something that, we use a lot of athletes, is just that full range of motion squat. But it is something, even weight training in general can often be seen as something that's almost scary for speed athletes. And make no mistake, it is possible to make your speed athletes slower. But most of that is in the short term. And if we approach S&C in an intelligent manner, you're looking at making them a more well-rounded athlete in the long run. And one of those stalwarts of a good S&C program, in our view and our experience, is that deep squats.
Absolutely, and I think it brings you back around again to that developmental side you were talking about earlier with the younger athlete. If you're a younger track and field athlete, field sports athlete, whatever it is, and you're learning the squat, obviously those shallower squats or those box style squats will get you heavier weight slightly quicker. Maybe you'll get to 200 kilos after a year and a bit versus 2 years or 2.5 years if you were to go full ass to grass. But the level of development you get, and particularly the level of tendon and joint integrity you get from the ass to grass, really can't be understated. As athletes, we all get injured. We were looking at an injury surveillance study earlier today just about the incidence rate, how many games you have to play or how many thousands hours you have to do before you get an injury. And if you're in a sport where you're sprinting, jumping, landing, you're going to get hamstring strains, you're going to get knee injuries, you're going to get quad strains. And in the cases where it's possible, you want to make sure you mitigate those factors as much as we possibly can. And definitely, full range of motion training is a great way of getting there.
Thank you for everyone who sends stuff into the new show. We're massively appreciative of it. The new show is obviously much better than would be otherwise. So please do DM those into us at Sika Strength Instagram, where it makes the new show so much better, and we appreciate everyone who takes the time to send those in. If you'd like to become a bit more of a unit like this, you don't necessarily play any sport, although lots of people do play sports who run this program, check out the Becoming a Horse program. There's 2 blocks of that so far on the Sika Strength app on iOS and Android. Free 7-day trial for everyone who signs up, so you can have a look around and see if it would suit your needs. Thanks for watching.